Gardening in Arizona in July is difficult. It is typically the hottest month of the year, but the tasks you do this month will help it survive and thrive. Today, we're talking about what to do in your vegetable garden, your flower garden, even your landscape this month. We'll talk about how much to water, which pests and diseases you can expect this month, and I'll even give you some extra tips for handling the extreme temperatures of a heat wave. I'm Angela from Growing in the Garden. My garden is in Mesa, Arizona. I want to help you succeed, even if you're gardening in tough conditions. If you're wondering what to plant this month, check out my other July video or my planting guides. I'll link to both of them here. Most of today's video will be about what to do, but there are a couple of things not to do. Don't prune anything, even if it's damaged. Pruning can expose new areas to the intense sunlight of July. Also, don't fertilize. When we fertilize, we tell plants to grow and put on new growth, and that may not be what they need to do during July. Hopefully you've already added a nice thick layer of mulch to everything in the garden, but if not, it's not too late. I use wood chips, and during the summer, I put them right on top of my watering grids. It helps that moisture stay in the soil. It shields the soil from that harsh sunlight. Plants and my soil are much happier. Same thing with shade. It's not too late to add even temporary shade to help those plants that are struggling make it through this hot month. Head out and harvest your vegetables first thing in the morning when it's coolest. The heat of the day is going to suck the moisture and everything out of that fruit, and if you harvest at that time, it's not going to last as long. Here's a tip for harvesting cucumbers and Armenian cucumbers when it's hot. Take a bowl of ice water out to the garden with you, and after picking, dunk them right away in the water. That ice water cools the cucumber quickly, and it will last longer and stay crisp. It's time to order fall planted bulbs like garlic, ranunculus, and anemone. If you want tulips, order pre-chilled tulips and plant them at Thanksgiving. If you want to grow the world's most expensive spice, saffron, it's time to order the bulbs. Anemone corms don't look like much, but they make beautiful blooms. I'm adding a lot more to my garden this year. July is a good time to go through your seeds and make a plan for fall and winter planting. If your onions bolted and you left them to make flowers, those seeds inside have been developing for a while and they might be ready. Rub those spent blossoms between your fingers and you should see black seeds inside. If they're black, they're ready to harvest. Clip off that flower and put them in a paper sack to dry. Same thing with your bolted herbs like dill and parsley and cilantro. The coriander, dill seeds, and parsley seeds have probably developed. You can leave them in the garden and they may pop up everywhere, or clip off those flower heads, put them in a paper sack, and save them to plant next year. You can tell they're ready when the seeds are fully formed and beginning to dry. Clip it off, drop them into a paper sack. They'll finish drying and they'll drop to the bottom of the sack. Tomatoes may be finishing up. Make a note of which tomatoes you liked and which ones did well so you remember what to plant next year. I usually have the best luck with my monsoon planted tomatoes, but the spring tomatoes that did well this year were the San Marzanos and our favorite Sun Gold cherry tomatoes. Echoy onions are all cured and ready to plant out next month. Use them and store them someplace with good ventilation so they don't rot before it's time to plant. If you haven't already, cut back your artichokes. Cut them off at the base just a few inches above ground level. They're not dead, they're just going dormant during the hottest months. Cover the crown with a nice thick layer of mulch to protect it over the summer. In the fall, you'll see new growth and new sprouts appear. If you're growing ginger and turmeric, give them plenty of shade. They don't mind the heat, but the sun will burn and scald their leaves. Do what you can to keep your pepper plants alive. They may struggle a little bit in the heat, but come September, they're going to get a new lease on life, lots of blooms, and you'll get a huge harvest in the fall. Many beans like lima beans and Christmas beans are climbing the trellis, getting lots of green growth, but they won't start putting out blossoms until the days get a little bit shorter. That's when you'll see blossoms and lots of beans. Roselle plants should be growing well, and they will begin to take off. Those heavy plants often require support, especially during heavy monsoon winds. I like to put a rebar stake right at the trunk and support them so those branches don't fall or break. Don't forget to harvest, use, and preserve all of the delicious summer herbs that are growing well, like this lemon verbena. If you keep it harvested, it will produce more and you'll have more to use and to share. For perennial herbs like this oregano or thyme or rosemary, harvest as needed, but don't give them a big prune over the summer. That can be really stressful. Some perennial herbs like this mint may struggle over the summer, but when temperatures cool down, you can cut them back and they'll get lots of fresh new growth. Keep your basil harvested. Not only does it discourage flowering, but right now is prime time for basil. Enjoy it in the kitchen, preserve it, share it with friends. Keeping basil harvested encourages more production, so you'll have more of that delicious herb that we all love. Pesto is so good and it's easy to freeze. I also love freeze drying. It's the closest thing to fresh. You get lots of that flavor and it rehydrates. It's delicious. Monitor plants for pests and diseases. If you see them overtaking the plant, it's often best to just pull them out rather than treat. The heat is stressful for plants, and a lot of times they won't recover. Let's talk about watering. Monsoons may bring moisture, but they may not. Watering is crucial this month. Monitor your plants for signs of stress, and then check the soil before you water. It will tell you whether or not the plants are suffering from heat stress, it's too hot, or if they actually need water. The easiest thing to do is pull back the mulch and check the soil. If your fingers get dirty when you reach into the soil, that means there's still moisture in the soil. But if not, it's probably time to water. The top of this soil is looking pretty dry, so I'll probably need to water these beds. If you don't want to get your hands dirty, a moisture meter will also tell you if there's moisture in the soil. Unless we get monsoon moisture and humidity, I'm watering my garden with the garden grids every other day. Should you water if it rains? A rain gauge is helpful to see how much rain you actually received. If you measure 1/2 inch of rain, you can skip watering. Pay attention to your plant's watering needs this month. Hopefully, you'll get a deep soaking rain. If not, at least once this month, water twice as long to flush the accumulated salt buildup deeper into the soil. Right now, I'm watering my landscape shrubs once every 7 days. And my trees once every 10 days. With some of the established desert-adapted plants in my yard, I'm watering them even less. I'm filling up my oyas every other day. After I fill up the oya, I also water all of the soil in the container and make sure it's nice and hydrated. Let's talk about some of the pests and wildlife you may see in the garden in July. If you have sunflowers, listen for the lovebirds. Be quiet when you're coming into your garden so you don't startle them away, and you may get to enjoy watching them enjoy the flowers. This month, you can also expect to see lots of bees, wasps, hummingbirds, lots of butterflies like Gulf fritillary and swallowtail, praying mantids, hornets, lizards, and snakes. These are all good guys, and I'm happy to have them in my garden. You may see aphids on things like pepper, cantaloupe, and even okra. Keep an eye on it so you know what's going on, but don't be too quick to treat. Encourage beneficial insects, and they will help you out. You'll probably also see katydids, grasshoppers, and crickets in the garden. They can cause some damage, but birds are a great help with all of these pests. Keep an eye on your pepper and tomato plants. You may see damaged leaves and insect frass. That means there's probably a hornworm. When you see the frass, look up and you'll find the hornworm. Pick it off and feed it to your chickens. You might see things like squash bugs and 3-lined cucumber beetles this month. They love squash, and the 3-lined cucumber beetles love tomatillos. Monitor your plants, check the undersides of leaves. The best thing you can do is check your plants every day. For many pests, beneficial insects will take care of them. But unfortunately, with squash bugs and the cucumber beetles, you have to take an active role in managing this pest. Once spotted, I keep a bucket of soapy water next to the plant and come out several times a day and pick off eggs, nymphs, adults, put them in the soapy water. Usually, if you're vigilant about this, you can catch it before it gets too bad. If a plant gets overtaken and the numbers increase, it's best to pull out the plant and cut your losses. You might see spider mite damage on your beans. They thrive in hot, dry conditions. What I've started doing is spraying down my beans once a day to keep the area a little more hydrated, and that's helping prevent a lot of the major damage. Remove the worst affected leaves, and that also helps prevent the spread. You might see circles cut out from leaves on roses, pomegranates, and other plants. Leafcutter bees are responsible. They use the leaves to build their nests. It's cosmetic damage only and nothing to worry about. These solitary bees are excellent pollinators. Monitor your pomegranate trees for all stages of the dreaded leaf-footed bug. They cause a lot of damage to the fruit. The best defense is that soapy bucket, hand picking and dunking them in the water. Keep your chickens cool this month by having water for them to stand in. I also put in a misting system and give them extra cucumbers and watermelon when it gets really hot. For flower gardening this month, the main task is to keep your flowers deadheaded. If you're going to harvest for cut flowers, come out early in the morning so the flowers have the highest moisture content and will last longer in the vase. You may need to support those tall sunflowers. The winds that come with the monsoons can knock them down. If your hollyhocks are done blooming, you want to cut them off at the base and leave the roots in place. They may grow again next season. Don't forget to save the hollyhock seeds that have developed on the plant. You'll know they're ready when they're black and they separate easily. Here's a look at what's blooming right now. Let's talk about what to do with our fruit and fruit trees in the garden this month. The first thing is, if you haven't already, make sure your citrus bark is protected. I like to use a citrus wrap on my trees. It will keep the sun off of that bark. You can also paint it, that works too, but protect any exposed bark from sunlight. Keep fruit like figs and apples harvested. Fallen fruit invites pests and diseases. If the birds are bothering them, you can cover them in little mesh bags to protect the grapes. Keep up with the blackberry harvesting so you get them before the birds do. Citrus trees naturally self-thin. They're going to drop fruit that they can't support. So don't be alarmed if you see a lot of fallen fruit on the ground. That's the tree's way of managing the amount of fruit that it produces. Keeping your tree well watered this month will go a long way to it forming good, healthy fruit. If your citrus tree is really struggling with sun damage in the current location, provide extra shade to get it through the summer. If it's still a young tree, you may want to move that tree to a new location in the fall that gets less sun. For landscape plants, it's important to check and review your irrigation system. Unfortunately, you're probably going to find out something's not working because a plant dies. If you have to replace a landscape plant, the best time to do it is in the fall. Look through this booklet to get ideas of desert-adapted plants that do well with less water and will handle the heat better than the plant that died. Even if we don't get rain this month, we'll probably get lots of wind. Proper pruning helps your plants withstand that high wind. July is always hot, but sometimes we get an extra heat wave that makes it exceedingly hot. If that happens, go easy on yourself. Plants will probably struggle when temperatures are above 110 and even 115 degrees. It is tough out there. During those heat waves, check your soil. You may need to water every day. That heat dries out the soil really fast. When temperatures moderate, you can go back to your regular watering schedule. Don't plant anything in the middle of a heat wave. It's too hard on that plant. Wait until it passes. July is hot. It's a good idea to also get out of town and enjoy other places with cooler weather. If you leave town, use these landscape flags to mark where you need your friends and neighbors that are stuck here to water your plants. Stick it in the plant and they'll know right where to water. If you want more information about any of these tips, head to my website, growinginthegarden.com. You can also get a printable list of all of these tasks so you don't miss anything. Now I'd love to hear from you. What are your best gardening in July tips? Let me know in the comments. If you would like to learn more, consider joining Growing in the Garden Academy. I teach a live online course every month about seasonal topics, and members have access to recordings of all past classes. Academy members also receive my garden journal, what I'm planting, harvesting, and doing in my garden, delivered to their inbox every 2 weeks. I hope to see you there.